I'm saddened, if not somewhat amused, to see what some try to promote as errors in the Bible. I'm also somewhat puzzled by why they put so much energy and emotion into disproving a book they don't even believe or like. Skepticism, all by itself, is often perceived as such an intellectual achievement that the facts only get in the way. The only thing they refuse to be skeptical about are their own assumptions and conclusions. Exposing a lack of research, critics of the Bible often imagine problems which are simply not there. A favorite criticism is that the Bible is unscientific. One of the strangest claims is that they think the Bible confuses whales and fish in the story of Jonah. One blog article I had sent to me recently listed this as an obvious proof that the Bible contains serious mistakes. Well, the blogger quoted from the Old King James Version of 1611. There in Jonah 1:17 it says that Jonah was swallowed by a great fish, while in Matthew 12:40 the King James says he was swallowed by a whale. Well, the full King James Version of these texts reads this way. In Jonah 1:17 it says, Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Then in Matthew 12:40 it says, For as Jonah, which is Jonah, was there 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Well, everyone who studied modern biology knows that whales are mammals, not fish. For example, they breathe with lungs, not with gills. So was the Creator not aware of this important distinction in His own creation? Is it proof that the Bible writers made terrible scientific mistakes? Or are the critics not as informed as they imagine themselves to be? First, it should be understood that the Bible was not written in English. The book of Jonah was written in a very ancient form of the Hebrew language. There, the word used for the creature that swallowed Jonah is the Hebrew word dag. It's a common word for fish. It's even used today in modern Israel. But in ancient times, it was a broad term used for all the animals that lived in the water, or many of them. It could apply to tuna, whales, trout, or dolphins. And in the book of Matthew, that was written much later in the Koine dialect of Greek. That's the form of Greek that was spoken by the common people. The word in the Old King James, translated as whales, is the word ketos. That's one of the words used in modern Greek for sea monsters or whales. But the more common word for whale is phalaena. Back in the 1st century, the whale wasn't distinguished as a mammal. There were no words that exactly correspond to our modern biological categories. Both Hebrew and Greek predate our modern taxonomic system by thousands of years. There was no distinction then reflecting how sea animals breathed. It wasn't until 1735 that Carl Linnaeus published his basic taxonomic system. Well, his wasn't the first system that categorized animals, and it's changed a lot since 1735. But those categories didn't exist before that later time in the history of science. The King James Version was translated over 100 years before Linnaeus. The modern Bible translations don't use the word whale in Matthew 12. For example, the English Standard Version and the New King James Version simply use the word fish there. The error is found in imposing modern taxonomic vocabulary upon the 1611 translation of very ancient words. From the actual Bible text, we have no idea what kind of sea animal it was that God sent to swallow Jonah. Scholars have studied the various species of aquatic life in that part of the world back then, and there are theories, but no compelling evidence that identifies with certainty what kind of animal was miraculously used by God to swallow that prophet. Science is more of a method than it is a set of undisputed facts. Observations are made, then they're reduced to measurements when possible. The gathered information is organized into categories, things are given names, and hypotheses are tested. Well, as observations improve and measurements become more accurate, categories, terms, and hypotheses are updated. Isaac Newton had no concept of the Higgs boson or the quantum theories of gravity or black holes. But it would be irresponsible to attack his writings as unscientific, for failing to mention those things when they weren't even something of importance back then. Anyone seriously studying science is aware that how we describe nature now will probably be very different as more information becomes available. But that doesn't mean the way we describe it now is a mistake. We use the language available to us, and language necessarily develops as we learn more about what's already there. We need to view science historically, since the terms we use will always be changing with time. So Linnaeus didn't make whales to suddenly become mammals in 1735. They always breathed with lungs as long as they were whales. He simply introduced more helpful language which was not used or even important when the Bible was written. As we learn more, we improve our vocabulary to better fit the way we organize information. Well, the authors of the books of Jonah and Matthew weren't mistaken about science. They used the appropriate words which most accurately describe what happened. The critics who attack the whale and fish terms are not just poor Bible and language students. They're also not very good at how science has worked down through the ages. Again, the critics do no harm to God's inerrant word. They only discredit themselves.